The Willow Creek Zoo, nestled in the lush green outskirts of Portland, Oregon, woke to a morning bathed in soft September light. Sunlight streamed through towering firs, casting dappled patterns on the winding paths where early visitors strolled, clutching coffee cups and trailing the laughter of children in strollers. The air carried the chatter of macaws, the rhythmic tick of sprinklers, and the faint musk of hay and earth. It was a perfect day, calm, vibrant, alive except at the gorilla enclosure. Inside the expansive habitat, a sprawling network of climbing structures, shaded grottos, and grassy knolls designed to mimic the Congo rainforest. Kwezi, a 400-pound silverback gorilla, paced with an intensity that set the staff on edge. Kwezi was the zoo's prida, majestic. Broad-shouldered giant with a glossy black coat and a demeanor usually as steady as the ancient trees he mimicked climbing. Rescued as a juvenile from a poaching camp in Rwanda, he'd grown under the care of the zoo's lead primate keeper, Nora Caldwell, into a gentle leader of his troop. Visitors adored his quiet strength. Keepers relied on his predictability. But today, Kwezi was anything but predictable. Nora, a wiry 38-year-old with cropped auburn hair and a quick smile, arrived at the enclosure just after dawn, her boots crunching on the gravel service path. She carried a bucket of enrichment toys puzzle feeders stuffed with mangoes and sweet potatoes, Kwezi's favorites. Normally he'd lumber over, grunting softly, his massive hands deftly solving the puzzles for treats. But this morning he ignored the bucket, his amber eyes fixed on her. His pacing was relentless, a tight circuit along the reinforced viewing glass, his knuckles grazing the ground with each heavy step. "Morning, big fella," Nora called, her voice warm but tinged with unease. Kwezi stopped, turned, and stared not at her face, but lower at her midsection. He raised a massive hand, not to pound or grab, but to point, his thick finger aimed directly at her abdomen. The gesture was deliberate, unnerving. The junior keepers, Sam and Lila, noticed immediately. Sam, a lanky recent hire with a passion for primatology, scribbled in his logbook, "He's off today. Didn't touch his breakfast? Keeps staring at you, Nora." Lila, wiping sweat from her brow, nodded. "Yeah, and it's only when you're here. When I did the 6 a.m. check, he was fine napping with the troop." Nora shrugged, though her stomach tightened. Maybe he's just moody. Gorillas get like that. But as she distributed the feeders, Kwezi shadowed her, his gaze never wavering. He'd pause, point again, then resume pacing, letting out a low, guttural rumble, not a threat, but a sound that vibrated with urgency, like a plea. By midday, during the public feeding demonstration, Kwezi's behavior escalated. A small crowd gathered at the glass, kids pressing their noses against it, parents snapping photos. Nora signaled for Kwezi to take a treat, a simple command he'd mastered years ago. Instead, he ignored the mango, swung his arm low, and pressed his palm against the glass right at that same spot, level with Nora's abdomen. The crowd gasped, mistaking it for a show of strength, but Nora's smile faltered. "Come on, Kwezi, work with me," she whispered. He didn't. Instead, he let out a sharp bark, a sound that startled the other gorillas to females. Zuri and Mala and a young male, Tano, they scattered to the far end of the enclosure, leaving Kwezi alone at the glass. He pointed again, his eyes locked on Nora, then dropped to her midsection. The intensity was palpable, like a message she couldn't yet read. Back in the staff lounge, over lukewarm tea, the team speculated. "Could be a dominance thing," Sam suggested. "He's asserting control." Lila shook her head. "No, this isn't dominance. Look at his eyes. It's like he's worried." Nora rubbed her temples, a dull ache pulsing. For weeks, she'd been battling fatigue, occasional dizziness, and a strange pressure in her pelvis. She'd chalked it up to stress, long hours, budget cuts at the zoo, her recent divorce weighing heavy. "I'm fine," she said, more to herself than them. "He's just being overprotective. You know how he gets." Kwezi's history with Nora ran deep. She'd raised him from a traumatized juvenile, spending nights by his crate singing softly to calm his nightmares. Over a decade, their bond had become legend visitors. Loved the way Kwezi would mimic Nora's gestures. Staff marveled at how he'd obey her commands with a single glance. Was this just protectiveness, or something more? The next few days brought no relief. Each morning, Nora arrived to find Kwezi waiting, his massive frame pressed against the glass. He'd ignore the troops' play, the fresh vines, even the new tire swing installed for enrichment. Instead, he'd track her movements, pointing with that same deliberate focus, always at her abdomen. His rumbles grew louder, more insistent, sometimes accompanied by a gentle thump against the glass, as if testing its strength. On the third day, during a private training session, Kwezi did something unprecedented. Nora stood in the protected contact area, a barred section for safe interaction, holding a target stick for him to touch. He complied briefly, then stopped, swung his arm, and pressed both hands against the glass. Fingers splayed right over that spot. His eyes, deep, soulful pools, held hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Kwezi, what's wrong?" she murmured, her hand instinctively touching her stomach. A wave of nausea hit, forcing her to lean against the bars. "Just tired," she told herself, but the words felt hollow. The staff grew alarmed. Dr. Elena Voss, the zoo's head veterinarian, a no-nonsense woman with a penchant for primate behavior, observed from the observation deck. "Gorillas have keen senses," she said during a staff briefing. "They can smell stress, illness, even pregnancy in humans." "Maybe he's picking up on something, Nora." Nora laughed it off, though her heart raced. "What? You think I'm pregnant?" "Not a chance." But Elena's words lingered. Gorillas could detect chemical changes. Studies had shown it with stress hormones. Could Kwezi sense something she was ignoring? That night, in her small apartment near the zoo, Nora couldn't sleep. The symptoms were mounting: bloating, loss of appetite, a nagging pain in her side. She'd dismissed them as burnout, maybe perimenopause at her age. But Googling fatigue, dizziness, abdominal pain women brought up unsettling possibilities. Ovarian cysts. IBS... cancer. She closed her laptop, heart pounding. "I'm fine," she whispered into the dark. The fourth morning, Kwezi's behavior intensified. As Nora approached with a crate of produce, he charged the glass not aggressively, but with purpose, stopping short and slamming both palms against it. The sound echoed, startling visitors. He pointed, growled, pointed again, his finger trembling with focus. Ziri and Mala kept their distance, sensing his tension. Tano, the young male, tried to approach, but Kwezi snarled, guarding the glass where Nora stood. Sam pulled her back. "This is getting serious. We need to check him for stress or illness." "I know," Nora said, voice firm. "He's not sick. He's trying to tell me something." The word hung heavy. Tell. But what? Kwezi's connection with Nora was no accident. In 2012, he'd arrived at Willow Creek, scrawny juvenile, ribs visible, eyes haunted from witnessing his family's slaughter. Nora, then a new keeper grieving her own Losuza miscarriage that ended her marriage, had volunteered for his care. She'd spent months by his side, teaching him to trust, feeding him by hand, mimicking his grunts to soothe him. Over years, Kwezi grew into the troop's alpha, and Nora became his anchor. He'd seek her out during storms, resting his massive head near her through the bars. When she'd cried over her divorce papers, he'd pressed his hand to the glass, as if offering comfort. Now, that bond was morphing into urgency. On the fifth day, Nora's symptoms peaked. During rounds, carrying a heavy crate, her vision blurred. A sharp pain stabbed her side. She dropped the crate, stumbling to her knees just feet from the glass. Kwezi roared a primal, earth-shaking sound that silenced the zoo. He threw himself at the barrier, fists pounding, eyes wild with desperation. The troop scattered, visitors screamed, but Kwezi kept hammering, always at that same spot, level with Nora's collapsed form. Lila shouted, "Get the medic!" Sam rushed to Nora, helping her to a bench. "You're not okay, Nora. We're taking you in." As they led her away, Kwezi's roars followed, fading into a low, mournful rumble that seemed to beg her to listen. At the zoo's clinic, the nurse checked her vitals. Blood pressure's dropping. Pain? "Here," Nora said, pressing her abdomen Kwezi's spot. Dr. Voss ordered tests. Blood work, ultrasound, CT scan. As Nora lay on the gurney, the technician's face paled. There's a mass. We need the doctor now. The diagnosis was stark. Ovarian cancer, stage 1B. Small but aggressive. Caught early, the oncologist said. Surgery and treatment, you've got a strong chance. Nora stared at the ceiling, Kwezi's frantic eyes flashing in her mind. He knew, she whispered. He's been trying to tell me, Zoo buzzed with the news. Staff reviewed security footage frame by frame, Kwezi pointing, pounding, growling, always at Nora's abdomen. It's like he was marking the spot, Lila said, voice hushed. Dr. Voss nodded. Gorillas have olfactory senses 10 times stronger than ours. Cancer cells release unique compounds. He must have smelled it, maybe weeks before symptoms showed. But why act? Kwezi wasn't trained for detection. The answer lay in their bond. He saw Nora as his family, his matriarch. His actions were driven by love, a need to protect. Surgery came swiftly. Nora clutched a photo of Kwezi as she was wheeled in, his hand pressed to the glass. Tell him I'll be back, she told Sam. The tumor was removed, the prognosis optimistic. Recovery was grueling, chemo sapped her strength. But the zoo rallied. Sam and Lila sent daily updates. Kwezi's calmer, but he waits by the glass every morning. A month later, Nora returned, frail but alive. The path to the enclosure felt endless, her cane clicking on the gravel. Visitors whispered, staff nodded in quiet awe. Rounding the corner, she saw him, Kwezi, massive and still, eyes lifting to meet hers. He crossed the enclosure in seconds, pressing his hand to the glass-same spot, but gentle now, no pounding. Nora raised her hand, palm to palm through the barrier. Tears fell. You saved me, Kwezi, he rumbled softly. A contentment vocalization, his eyes soft with relief. The troop quieted, sensing the moment. A child nearby whispered, Is he hugging her? A visitor's video of Kwezi's warnings went viral. Gorilla saves keeper's life. News outlets swarmed, the guardian gorilla, a bond beyond words. Experts weighed in gorillas could indeed detect chemical changes like dogs with tumors. The zoo launched the Kwezi program, funding animal-assisted diagnostics. Nora became a voice for awareness, speaking at conferences, writing a memoir. Subplots wove in, a rival keeper's skepticism, a poaching threat to Kwezi's wild kin, Nora's reconciliation with her estranged sister. Her romance with a journalist covering the story added warmth. Years later, Nora, cancer-free, and Kwezi, aging gracefully, continued their ritual hand to glass, a silent promise. Their story became a documentary, a children's book, a beacon of hope. Kwezi wasn't just a gorilla. He was a sentinel, proving love speaks in gestures, rumbles, and unrelenting care. Thanks so much for listening. See you in the next video. Have a great day.